Let's start with the Google Cloud migration journey. We have been showing this to customers for a very long time. And as more and more customers migrate their workloads to Google Cloud, we've been able to validate this over and over and over again. And the key thing to this, the reason we keep talking about that, is because it works. It takes an inherently complex and monstrous process of a cloud migration and puts it down into very manageable and executable chunks of work. Now, we know that this has to happen in specific order. We discover and assess our application landscape. We build the foundation of GCP services from IAM and networking and basic architecture. Then we actually perform the migration itself. And once that migration is done, you assess all of the things that you assumed in the process, and you go ahead and start optimizing for cost or performance or capability or whatever your application needs. And then it's also important to remember that there are multiple ways that we can get there. You can do a traditional lift and shift, where you just want to lower the overall complexity and increase the speed of moving services to the cloud. You can do the improve and move, where you want to refactor some local code in order to take advantage of cloud-native tools before you actually migrate the services up. Or you can do rip and replace, where you just want to start over with the full toolkit of cloud at your fingertips. But the key thing to this, and as anyone in the room who's ever done a cloud migration can tell you, is we all hear that story of no two cloud migrations are ever the same. And I want to clarify that statement for the room. It's a personal stand I want to take here, which is that all successful cloud migrations are unique in their own way, because you all have different technologies and industry verticals and data centers and all of these things. But all failed cloud migrations all fail for the exact same reason. They either didn't have a plan to begin with, or they didn't stick to the plan that they built on. And we know that these things are incredibly easy to talk about and incredibly hard to actually execute. And when we see a customer that comes through, follows this journey, makes a plan, and has a passion for learning, exploring, and testing, we see success. And today is the story of one such customer in Kroger Digital. I'd like to introduce Joe Timmons, a technical account manager here at Google, to begin the rest of the story.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. So I am in the Google Cloud Professional Services organization, and for the last year and a half, I've had the privilege of working with Kroger in Cincinnati on their migration journey, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about that today. But before I dive into that, I want to talk more broadly about why retailers love Google Cloud. So in order to think about where we're going in retail, let's first take a minute and look backwards. I'm kind of bitter because I missed the cool attribute of being a millennial by 2 years. So I was born 2 years too early to be called a millennial. But growing up in the 80s and 90s, in terms of retail, all you had was a retail brick and mortar store or a catalog. That was pretty much it. And malls were the thing. Everybody went to the mall and everybody loved the mall. And my priority at that time was buying apparel. So when I went to the mall, I would go in and buy the latest and greatest and the coolest shirts. And let's think about that experience. And has that experience changed that much from 25 years ago to today? If we were to walk into those same brands that I bought from before, not that much. However, the next 25 years are going to be incredible for the brick and mortar store. I believe it will be a renaissance because of a confluence of incredible technologies that are all coming together at the right time to do that. Technologies like computer vision, IoT, edge compute, machine learning, and obviously the public cloud. Using all of these technologies together, the customer experience will be totally transformed, not only digitally, but also in the store. And that's what we hear from a lot of our retailers that I talk to, is that omnichannel, seamless experience is their priority. Warren Buffett has a famous quote. He says, "The most important decision that you'll make in your life is who you marry." And we believe at Google Cloud, the most important decision that you will make, or your CIO will make, is which cloud they choose to innovate with. So let's talk about Kroger. 136-year-old company, started in Cincinnati, and they have over 2,800 retail stores, multiple brands. They do have a $5 billion digital run rate, and they're growing like gangbusters online at a 58% growth last quarter. 60 million families rely on Kroger annually to serve them for their groceries, as well as 14 million shoppers pass through their doors every day. And Kroger has this amazing purpose that they have stated, that they want to feed the human spirit. And they're also going through a huge digital transformation. And they call that digital transformation Restock Kroger. And we've been proud to be a big part of that strategy over the last year and a half. So what were Google Cloud's goals? What was the whole point? What was their stated mission in adopting the Google Cloud? So they have these pillars that they talk about in Kroger Digital, where they want their digital entities to be available, accessible, and relevant to their customers. And that equals a better customer experience. And they also wanted an accelerated transformation. So that's where the Google Cloud Professional Services team and our partner network came into play, where we could send teams of people side by side with Kroger engineers and help them not only through their migration itself, but to plan out all of those technical attributes that need to be decided to do any large-scale cloud migration. And then finally, the key thing that Kroger wanted to do with Google Cloud was to be their innovation partner. So the buzzword, obviously, AI, ML. And what that really boils down to is to better understanding their customers. And the interesting thing that Kroger found is that the more relevant they made their digital experience for their customers, counterintuitive thing happened. Actually, more customers visited their stores, and they spent more time in the stores, which is an incredible outcome for all of you who also have this omnichannel experience that you're trying to improve and motivate and build. So the key thing before I pass it over to Jeff is that if you leave this conference thinking that cloud is just VMs in somebody else's data center, you've missed the point. The real opportunity to partner with Google Cloud is the opportunity to transform your business for the next 25 years in retail. And with that, I'll pass it over to Jeff.
Thanks, Joe. So I'm Jeff Hecht. I'm the engineering manager for the digital search team specifically within Kroger. This is the search engine that's used for, the website and the mobile app and things like that. So kind of where do you start, right? And so where we chose to start was what are we currently using that supports our business? What got us to where we are today but isn't going to take us to the next level that Joe was referring to? So I think this diagram that we have here really describes things well, right? We've got, a mix of a lot of different technologies. A lot of you guys are probably using a lot of this technology yourselves, right? But we're doing it all on-prem, right? And it's time to sort of kick it into gear and take it to the next level, right? And so the big question we had was, do we do a lift and shift type thing? Do we take our existing search strategy that we're doing? Do we move that out there and, realize the benefits of GCP in that way? Or is this something that we can do to completely re-platform the search, solution that we have, which is ultimately what we chose to do? So as we got into this, it's kind of overwhelming, right? It's like, okay, cool, we're going to go to the cloud. All right, cool. How do we get there? What do we do? So, we had three different options, right? The first option is, do we do it all ourselves, right? That's a tall task, especially when, we have a limited experience in GCP on our staff, right? And we still have to keep the old thing running. So, these are all real business problems that we have, right? So the next thing, right, is so should we just basically partner with Google, right, and utilize their professional services teams, the technical account managers, and the consultants to make this happen? Now, they've got loads of experience, and we can probably get there quickly. But ultimately, what we want is we want to have that center of excellence in our teams, right? And so that's where we chose ultimately kind of option 3 that you see up on the screen there, which is we kind of did a hybrid, right? So we have our team working with Google and one of the Google preferred partners. We used Spring ML in this case. And, basically we had Spring ML and Google resources, literally shoulder to shoulder pairing at workstations, building, the software-defined architecture and things that we built here to make all this happen. And in the end, we ended up not only producing a really awesome solution for this, but we also have people who are vested in it and understand how it works, right? So the way we kind of arrived at this is we got everybody in a room, a big room, 3 days, I think, and we had several Kroger engineers, several Google folks, several Spring ML folks, and we started with, okay, what is the thing that we have today and where do we want to take this, right? And so we got all of our tribal knowledge, all this stuff that that's the intangibles, right? We drug all that out, and everything we wanted it to be. And essentially coming out of that, we ended up with this, what I call a reference architecture, not only for search, but for a lot of the other applications that we're moving out to the cloud as well. And one of the big founding tenets that we had is everything infrastructure as code. Everything infrastructure as code. Nothing, no console stuff, right? We want to be able to spin these things up, tear it down, iterate. So that was huge for us. So, there again, the other point that you see there with building and adapt and move on is the infrastructure as code pieces were really valuable for us to be able to do this, right? We're never building something that we can't build again and again and again, right? So we failed a lot, right? So don't be afraid to fail. This is, I'll raise my hand and say, the biggest lessons I've ever had in life are the ones where I did something wrong. Fixing it by doing it over and over and over. And then you guys have all seen the pets versus livestock thing. This is truly a huge tenet in moving your applications out there. You've got to get away from having these special purpose things. Oh, this host, it does this thing, right? You got to get away for that. And so when the guys would come up to me, they would say, "Hey, this is really great. We got the new thing working," right? And I'd say, "That's really awesome, guys. I'm really glad for you. Tear it down and do it again, and do it again, and do it again." And so, and the team was fantastic. They did a great job with that. So as we did this, right, we started to see our mindset change. We went from this on-prem pets sort of mentality, right, to one where we're expecting transient resources and things like that, and being able to move workloads around very easily. Some of the other things that we kind of struggled with more as a global Kroger is things like data classification. What's safe? What are things we feel comfortable moving out to the cloud? This is our first thing, right? What are things that we feel comfortable moving to the cloud? Search was obviously a pretty easy decision to make because all that stuff's available on the internet today, right? So there's not a whole lot we're going to be throwing out there that everybody who's crawling us doesn't already have, right? And then also being able to trust and empower our engineers to do things that maybe they haven't done before, right? If you think about on-prem, right, you've got a team of guys that are standing up VMs. You have people installing the OS and doing that kind of thing, right? Where this is different, right? We've got Kubernetes, and we've got these Dockerized containers of things, and we are really embracing the DevOps on both sides of that, right? I mean, development and operations. Our team has really done a great job supporting both of those. It's not all unicorns and rainbows, though. We had quite a few speed bumps. Networking, getting networks installed into our on-prem data centers and things like that was sometimes a bit of a challenge. In fact, I think one of our data centers, we didn't even have the right kind of fiber line, and so we had to run a fiber line or something out there. It's all these things that you don't think about, right? When you're building, when you go, oh yeah, we're gonna move an application out there, and then you got to think, what does this actually mean? We're going to put customers on this stuff. What do we have to have, right? And these are all these intangibles that you got to think about as you start moving your applications out there, right? It's kind of a big deal. Some simple things like even our CI/CD pipelines, right? On our on-prem solution, we're deploying our containers in a blue-green fashion, and it's something we don't even think about. It's in-house tooling. Okay, we go to GCP, and we're deploying our applications to our Kubernetes clusters. And okay, wow, how are we going to do blue-green deployment? Because this is expected for what we have. So this is also kind of things that sort of snuck up on us, as we moved along. And then, and I could just kind of keep going and going and going on that thing. The important thing is when you're doing your discovery phase, think about the stuff that you take for granted when you're trying to plan this stuff out and put your timelines together, right? So given that, I'm going to pass the mic over here to Tony DiLoretto. He is a cloud consultant from Google, and we work very closely with Tony and his team to make all this stuff happen.
Thanks, Jeff. So yes, as Jeff said, my name is Tony DiLoretto. I was the cloud consultant working with Jeff's team to help the migration and all the architecture. I want to walk you through now just how we thought about building out this new system on GCP, right? But before we could even move the first byte, we had to have a plan in place like we talked about. And we wanted to make sure that we would cover all the bases and we had everything in the cloud ready to go. So to do so, I wanted to focus on 5 key points. And they all begin with an S. I call them the 5 S's. Simplification, right? You'll see in a second what we went from to what we ended up with. Security, making sure it was secure in the cloud. Stability, being able to grow and scale with our customer base. Kroger, being a national company, has customers all over the United States and in the world coming to the website, so we wanted to make sure we could grow with that. Data science, or the science bit. And finally, microservices, right? All of these different pieces we had to incorporate into the architecture to make sure that this application could grow with Kroger and its customers' needs. So as we already saw, this is what I walked into. And again, probably not dissimilar to what many other people here are using today, right? We have sort of this search Frankenstack, if you will, with a lot of different platforms where the teams had to manage all the different releases and patches and security and platforms, and making sure that all of the infrastructure was set up for it and ports. You can, the list goes on and on. This is obviously one of the true benefits of migrating to the cloud, is not having to deal with all of that. But this is where we started with. This was our beginning point of the roadmap. And there were a lot of different areas of which we had to ensure that we incorporated into this architecture, not only just the platforms themselves and the technology, but testing and validation, rolling out, being able to make sure there were no single points of failure, and all the while ensuring that the data was at the right place at the right time. So like I said, the first thing we focused on was the simplification of this architecture. We wanted to go from this multi-tenant, multi-platform stack into something straightforward. And as you know, probably with any application, there are a few key elements or key phases to the architecture that needs to include. So this is the initial sort of look at what we had to migrate to, incorporating those key tenants, the ingestion of data coming in from Kroger, the transformation of the data, how are we going to prepare it for being used, storage in some vehicle within Google Cloud, and then, like Jeff mentioned, running on Kubernetes, or the application layer of which all the customers could then interact with. Again, this is a very solid baseline template for almost any application running in the cloud, because it does incorporate many of those key tenets of a pipeline or of an application running in the cloud. One of the best things that Google has the advantage is to come in and just drop in and replace some of the existing infrastructure. We are able to identify in that previous architecture which of these elements lined up to the different hexagons and the different verticals you see in here. Doing so allowed us to iterate fast, sometimes fail fast, but iterate rapidly, and to continue to move on. The next thing we focused on was stability. Again, I wanted to make sure that we had the ability to grow and handle traffic as Kroger grew. As you saw at the very beginning, Kroger has been, and we wanted to be able to capture all of that and to deliver those low latency and high durability, stability requirements. So we could have easily have just taken that initial architecture and just copied it into 3 zones and been done with it. But anybody who's been using any sort of cloud service or managed service in the past knows that this isn't the optimal way of doing so. Where Google really shines again is having those managed services that scale with customers, where you don't have to worry about bringing up your own instances of them for things such as PubSub at the very beginning, or Dataflow. So what we were able to do is, we iterated on this, but having it in multiple regions allowed that layer to be able to grow and scale and handle customers wherever they were. The next thing we wanted to do was focus on scaling this out. So we took that architecture that we just looked at and we sort of condensed it down to what we really wanted to focus on. Really, what is Kroger's IP and what they should be bringing in, and that's really in that application layer, right? All of the other hexagons to the left, that's Google managed services that we've built and tried and true and tested. So let's really focus on what makes the Kroger search application unique. So what we were able to do is focus on deploying applications in a rolling manner into each of the different regions within Google Kubernetes Engine. Once we were able to do that initially through a test, we wanted to focus more on the service aspect, that service-oriented architecture that you always hear about. So we were able to break it up into multiple apps, and every app could then do what it was made for. Imagine moving a giant monolith to a more nimble and service-focused application itself. This pattern is very simple to then grow with and scale, and as you could see, once you have one app down, you can easily replicate it to many others. This architecture that you end up seeing is not dissimilar from what we ended up pushing forward, and again, it is a tried and true pattern that you can then use for any of your applications. Kubernetes allowed us to scale, and it allowed us to be able to really focus on what Kroger needed to do. The next thing we had to focus on was security. Obviously, security is very important to everybody that's using Google Cloud. So some of the key considerations that we thought about when building out this first initial architecture of using Google Managed Services are number one. If you can use Google Managed Services, it takes the responsibility away from having a single point or single person worrying about managing different instances. The next thing were service accounts as well. Service accounts were deployed throughout, and again, it's one of our best practices. By enabling extensive logging and monitoring, we're able to get at any issues immediately to be able to detect and to be able to optimize around. Finally, key management, making sure that all the data that was going through was secure at rest and in transit. And finally, we also used managed node pools to be able to ensure that we had enough architecture or enough infrastructure when we needed it. And finally, the last thing we focused on was the science aspect, right? Everybody, again, wants to get to the AI, the ML. But after we were able to build out this architecture, then we could really dive into that. So some of the different areas that are opportunities for doing data science with an architecture, one was real-time ingestion or streaming analytics. So when the data was coming in, do we see any issues with that? Second was data quality analytics once we're doing our transformation of the data. Do we notice that any of our providers or upstream sources had issues or was delivering at the wrong time that we needed to correct? Third was any sorts of prescriptive or predictive analytics on top of the data once it was in storage. Being able to do modeling and be able to get at really what our customers' data is key. And then finally, the usage or customer analytics on the app itself. Where are they interacting with the app? What are their points of confusion or areas that we can then improve for the next iteration? And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jeff to talk a little about lessons learned and the next steps.
Yeah, so lessons learned. I don't think I have enough time to go through all the lessons learned, right? But some of the important takeaways, right? It's important to understand that my focus and my team's focus is primarily on search and relevance and things like that. And one of the important things that we're doing is we're doing actual data science now to let our customers' actions on our site talk to us about what types of products we should be returning based on those types of search terms. And and that's that AI ML thing that Tony was talking about there, and that's real big, for us with what we're doing in some Dataproc stuff that we have set up internally. We have a system called Agatha, and so we're actually doing real data science on this to be able to do this type of stuff. The other thing that's great is we're able to launch completely new stacks, fully populate them with content and everything, literally with the click of a button. One of the guys on my team, Jim, literally on Saturday spun up a new environment that we needed for some testing, and the whole thing took an hour to build the entire search stack. So that goes back to that whole infrastructure as code piece. It's huge, right? The other nice thing that you can probably saw on those diagrams that Tony had up there, but is the scaling factor of this. We literally can scale this thing out to infinity. It's really easy for us to do that now. And then, the new search platform, and a lot of this is based on some of the GCP tools that we're using. A lot of this is also based on the re-architecture that we did of the search engine, but we can handle, orders of magnitude more volume than we did before, with just an amazing improvement in response time and stuff. So, it's the whole re-architecture and then dropping it on GCP was just of absolute benefit to us. So, right, what does this mean then for the future of Kroger on the cloud? There's a ton of work to do here, right? Lots of workloads to go, more than I can talk about here. Some of those potentially lift and shift, some of those re-architecture type things. But the important thing to take away from this is that our application really broke down a lot of barriers for the teams that are sort of riding in our coattails and following along. So, that helps to accelerate the rest of those applications and those teams, which is super important for Kroger and ultimately our customers. To be able to take, to take that to the next level. And then the other nice thing that's about it, that working with the Google guys and is, if I could put this in one sentence, I think it was, how can I help you help Kroger, right? I can't tell you how many times Tony would give me a call and say, hey, I've got these guys from BQ, from BigQuery, and they want to understand what's important to you for how you're doing your machine learning and your AI and things like that. And we'd hop on a phone call and, and have these discussions. And that's the first time that I've ever had, a partner get with me and say, I want to make your job easier. What can I do to do this? It's usually me, saying, hey, this thing that we're trying to use doesn't work, or I need to pound this square peg through this round hole. And so, that's been fantastic. I've really enjoyed that too. And it's kind of cool to also think that, things that are important to us as Kroger might actually be influencing, products and things that Google's going to, develop someday that might be, beneficial to you guys as well. So, that's pretty great. Yeah, that's pretty cool.